Hey everyone, Mitch coming with the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, first up, how's your day been? Pretty good. Mine's been pretty good as well. The snow is finally melting again. Yes, it is mid-April in Minnesota, but yeah, it was like 85 last week for a couple days, and it was amazing, and the snow was gone, and then all of a sudden we got like 4 more inches of snow over the weekend because, you know, Minnesota. Regardless, this is not a show about the weather. This is going to be a deck on an Omega level commander, an incredibly powerful commander that is a massive threat, and that is, of course, the brand new, exciting Zimone and Dina. My goodness, the potential for this commander is just absurd. A 3/4 human dryad for black, green, blue. That's right, Sultai. Here we go. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Tap, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield tap. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. Okay, this is pretty crazy. First up, this is a landfall-centric commander, one that can give you an absurd amount of value, card advantage, and ramp, and also draining your opponents in life gain too. All for just a 3-mana commander that gives you access to, arguably, the 3 best colors in Commander. At least the 3 ones that give you access to all the best ramp, the best card draw, and yeah, some other fantastic effects. And well, I guess the best tutors as well if you're going in that direction. Regardless, some crazy good things you can do this one. Some that might even be infinite, basically, essentially, with this commander as well. And yeah, there's some very powerful plays that you can make. Now, on this episode, on this deck tech, like all my other deck techs, well, I'm going to take you through different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. Of course, also, and I probably should mention this before, but every single card in this deck outside of the commander, which is $3.63 currently, that might go down once that is actually released. But at this point, it is not underneath my $1 budget. That's okay. The rest of the deck is incredibly budget friendly. Again, every other card is less than $1, and the total cost for this deck, according to Moxfield, is just $28.81. So pretty crazy right there. Also, if you want to buy this deck, well, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. Make sure you check that out. And now as if I could get my breath caught and if I could get back on track, here we go. Let's jump into it. Tactic number 1. And, yeah, I've got to do it. Of course, first up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. A fantastic turn 1 play. Turn 2 ramp. Can help us out no matter what lands we have. If we've got islands, got swamps, does not matter. It can ramp us, and it's a fantastic way to do it. Pay 2 tap, sacrifice, go get a basic land, into play tapped. Moving on. Druid class. Yeah, I'm highlighting an enchantment like this pretty early, but it is a fantastic one. A class that says, well, whenever land enters battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That's nice. That's, I mean, that can be pretty impactful. You know, again, we've got, already have other ways, to gain life, including other commander. But the most important part of this one is pay 3 and a green and play additional land on each of your turns. So we've got even more ways to get even more lands out of our hand into play. And we've got certain lands that maybe get back into our hand in certain ways. So, yeah, we've got ways to get even more lands into play, not just this with our commander, and some other ways too. And also, this can make one of our lands hit really hard too, if we really want to go do that. Next up, though, Edge of Autumn, basically a rampant growth, but we can also cycle it away to sacrifice a land to draw a card. And technically, yes, you need to have 4 less lands, but yeah, when you want to ramp, this is going to be a good card for you. When you don't want to later in the game, you got plenty of other ways to ramp. Just get rid of that land so that you can draw a card. Next up, Rampant Growth. Yeah, you're staying to ramp spell. 2 mana. Go get a basic and play tapped. Great. And, sorry, Steve. Basically the exact same thing, right? We're going to sacrifice you. We're going to go with that basic and a play tap. You're not going to last very long. Or, we can sacrifice you with our commander if we really want to, to actually utilize that as, the fodder that we need to, fuel our commander. But again, we've got plenty of other fuel for our commander we're talking about here in a bit. Also, we've got Cultivate, a great way to get a land into play and a land into our hand. 1 basic and a play tap, 1 into our hand. And again, a great way to set ourselves up, not just for a land drop, but also for a way to get it out of our hand into play with our commander. Speaking of into play, hey, Grow from the Ashes, kick it for 2 extra mana and get 2 basics into play untapped. If you can't pay that, just get 1 into play untapped. A great card that can really kind of fuel us and just keep things going in a turn. Next up, we've got Harrow. Incredible landfall effects. Sacrifice 1 land, go get 2 basics into play untapped for just 3 mana. Yeah, getting 2 landfall triggers, that can be huge. We'll talk about some great landfall triggers here in a little bit. In a very similar way, Roiling Regrowth, just slightly worse. Basically the exact same thing, except Unlike Harrow, those lands come to play tapped, so we can't utilize them right away. Moving on, Search for Mar, another great turn 3 play, but a very good turn 1 play. Suspend 2 for a single green mana, get a basic into play untapped. And then we've got another creature that can help us out at 3 mana with Springbloom Druid. Sacrifice 1 land, get 2 basics into play tap. Basically, Roiling Regrowth on ETB. And yeah, there are some ways to use and abuse ETBs with this kind of a deck. And this is a great one to do so with. Moving on, speaking of Enter the Battlefield effects, yep, Landfall, let's talk about this one. Tireless Provisioner, I did not expect to see this. I'm just choked up on it right now, apparently. I didn't expect to see this budget ever. Oh my goodness. The amount of just craziness could happen with this card. Yeah, when Wizards print this uncommon, I was like, are you sure that's an uncommon effect? It's not really an uncommon effect. Landfall, whenever land is battlefield under control, create a food token or a treasure token. Yeah, food's nice, but you're going to be choosing treasure token pretty much all the time. So yeah, basically, hey, you know that ramp that you just did? Let's ramp further. I mean, it's, you know, it's temporary ramp, the treasure tokens, but still, you can get an absurd amount of treasures in play and get way ahead of your opponents with this. Yeah, did not expect this to be budget friendly, but with that reprint, it is currently. Moving on, this one works very, very, very well with your commander, Stoneseater Hierophant. Whenever a land comes into play, you untap it, and it can tap to untap target land. So again, your commander is going to get lands into play from your hand, but those lands come to play tapped. This is like, oh, I see that land come to play. I'll untap and untap that land. And then you do it again, untap that land. Yeah, you can do a lot of value out of this. And yeah, just even, you know, with other landfall triggers, other landfall effects, you're able to really take advantage of this and get a lot of mana out of your lands. And yeah, we've got some lands that can tap for even more than 1 mana. So you can get an absurd amount of mana out of something like this. And then finally, in this first tactic, let's finish things off with Verdict Mastery. A great card. Either pay 4 or 6. If you pay 4 mana for this, you get 2 basics into play tapped. You get 1 in your hand and 1 to play under an opponent's control. If you pay 6, you're getting 2 into play tapped still and 2 in your hand. So again, you got the mana for it. Set yourself up by getting those lands in your hand, not just for land drops, but also for your commander. Speaking of setting yourself up, though, let's move on to tactic number 2. Again, our commander needs creature fodder to actually utilize that for the ability. So let's start things off with Jor-El, Moonvolley Recluse, which is an incredible creature for this deck. An incredible, well, commander in its own right, but one that works very well hand in hand with this commander, a 1/2 human druid for just 2 mana. It says whenever you draw your second card each turn, you get a 2/2 cat creature token. Yeah, drawing 2 cards at a turn is no big deal at all. In fact, with a simple activation from our commander, we can draw 2 cards, well, on any turn we really want to once we have 8 lands in play, right? Essentially. So, yeah, being able to do that, we can make a lot of creature tokens throughout the game, which we can utilize for our fodder for our commander. And on top of that, by paying 4 green, until on turn, creature control base power times XX number of cards in your hand. That, of course, can be a really high number, and we can make our creatures really, really deadly, and we can make a lot of creatures. I mean, let's now talk about Chasm Skulker, a great way to kind of store up creatures all in one place, essentially. A 1/1 that has, whenever you draw a card, you get a counter on it. That's nice. This can become incredibly large, but hey, when you want to pop that balloon, just pop it, because when it dies, you get X/1/1 blue squared creature tokens with Ilock or X number counters on it. So a lot of potentially unblockable creatures against certain opponents, and also, again, a lot of creature fodder for your commander. Moving on, Nadir Kraken. This one does cost a little bit of mana to actually make it work, but still, it is pretty incredible. Whenever you draw a card, you can pay 1. If you do get a counter on it, and make a 1/1 tentacle. So basically, you kind of get a Chasm Skulker, but all in one right away. You do have to pay that 1 every time you're drawing. That being said, yeah, that's a good deal. So yeah, it can definitely provide you a lot of value throughout the game. Speaking of which, Ethereal Investigator. This one's a great one as well. 2/3 flyer, enters the battlefield, investigate X time or X the number of opponents you have. In Commander, that's probably about 3, right? As long as you haven't wiped any of them out yet. And then whenever you draw your second card each turn, which again is going to happen quite a bit, you get a 1/1 Spirit with Flying. So again, another way to make a lot of creature fodder for you. And next up, we've got Spore Mountain. This is incredible. This is where it really gets good. So whenever a land enters battlefield to control, you get a 1/1 Saproling. Great. Hey, again, your commander is going to get lands into play from your hand. With this trigger, you then get a creature. So then you've got something else that you can sacrifice with your commander. Again, basically replacing whatever you just sacrificed. That and then some. Of course, you get plenty of other ways to ramp like we already talked about. Moving on, even bigger creatures. Zendikar's Royal, going to make 2/2 elementals with a landfall effect. And yes, even bigger than that. Oh my goodness, Rampaging Baloths can really take over the game. 6/6 Trampler, landfall. Whenever a land is bound for your control, you make a 4/4 beast. Gross. So yeah, every single time one of those lands comes into play, no matter if you're ramping or with your commander, which is also ramping, I guess, right? You're making 4/4s. And again, your commander can get 2 lands into play at a time once you hit, 8 lands, essentially. So gross, 8 power across 2 bodies just for doing that. Absolutely incredible. A lot of creature fodder for you, and yeah, powerful creature fodder at that. Now, you might think we're done with our fodder yet, but no, we are not, because in the next tactic, we've got what's called Fodder Fun. That is tactic number 3, and we're going to start things off with a card that I love when it works out in the right deck, and that is Dreadhorde Invasion. So, zombie armies. I'm not really a fan of the way that mechanic entirely works. It's kind of weird in my opinion, but it works well with a commander like this that can manage it. Beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass 1. Amass, I guess, is the technical keyword or mechanic or whatnot. Regardless, you make a 0/0 zombie army that gets a counter on it. And then basically, if you already have a zombie army, you just get a counter on it instead of, you know, making another zombie army. Which I just think is kind of wonky and kind of weird, but essentially with this, it's kind of like a Bitter Blossom for you, because you can just keep sacrificing them again each turn with your commander. On every single one of your turns, you're making a 1/1 zombie. Cool. Sacrifice it. You don't need, you know, to keep that zombie army around and make it larger and larger. That really doesn't matter for this kind of a deck. So you just want to keep utilizing this as a low to the ground, incredible, again, Bitter Blossom-esque, again, essentially fodder engine. Speaking of fodder engines, though, Awakening Zone. This card is budget again. It's been budget for a little bit. Kind of went up and down for a while, and I was really happy to see it get budget again because, oh my goodness, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token that you can sacrifice for mana, or you can sacrifice with your commander. So a great card that can create a lot of fodder for you throughout the game. And again, you know, use it for mana, use it for your commander's ability, whatever you need. Next up, Local the Clouded Mirror. Now, this one kind of works like our other, you know, land generating, creature generating because of land, creatures like Spore Mound, etc. This one's a bit different, though, and can get quite spicy. So, pay 1, return a land you control to its owner's hand, create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with flying. So, this one essentially says, hey, yeah, I'd really like to take advantage of my commander's ability, but wait, I don't have a land in my hand. Oh, okay, I'll pay 1, make a creature token, get a land back into my hand, tap my commander, and then utilize that essentially. So I get that land back into play, get my other landfall triggers, whatever they are, draw a card, and also again have another creature token, you know, every single time I'm doing this to essentially, you know, utilize for sacrificing. And yeah, this can just be a great way to out of nowhere kind of make an army that maybe you can pump with, you know, Jor-El and just, yeah, take your opponents out too. So it's a great card for a deck like this. Next up, just a ton of creatures. I think it's, what, 7 creatures essentially in one? Actually, maybe even more than that. A lot in one, though. Mitotic Slime. Maybe it's 9. Here we go. When it dies, you create 2 2/2s. And then when they die, you make 2 1/1s. So that would be, what, you start with a 4/4, and then you get 2 2/2s. That's 3. And then you get 2 more for each. I think it's 7. Let's just go with 7 for right now. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but yeah, I think it's 7. A lot of creatures with this. Regardless, yeah, hey, sacrifice a lot of things for the price of 1. A lot of value for you. Speaking of value, hey, your opponent's creatures can even help you out too, and so can yours. Ogre Slumlord. Whenever another non-tone creature dies, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token. Red to control Death Touch. I almost said you control. This one does not say you control, which means that your opponent's creatures dying give you rats, which are fantastic. And again, they've got Death Touch as long as this is in play, which makes them very, very deadly in combat. Try blocking them, opponents. Good luck. Or, hey, don't swing at me. I've got rats. So, great. And again, just an incredible fodder engine for you. Whenever any creature dies, you're making tokens. Have fun. Next up, Thieving Amalgam. Another way to take advantage of your opponents. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of the player's library. Basically, you put it face down as a 2/2. You can play it. But regardless, whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its controller loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So now if you're sacrificing those creatures that you don't own, but you do control, you're also draining that opponent, which is quite funny too. So yeah, a great card for a deck like this. Fodder and fun for you. Next up, though, speaking of fun, let's talk about, well, tactic number 4, do that again, because the fun is not going to stop with this commander, of course, because we've got more than one way to, you know, activate our commander more than once in a turn. Quirion Ranger, a great one. Bounce a force you control back to your hand, untap target creature, activate once each turn. So yeah, basically, hey, give my commander, you know, another avenue to utilize that land, essentially, back in my hand. Next up, a really big play, Dramatic Reversal. If we've got kind of, you know, some untap effects in play, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, we can untap all of them, including our commander, for just 2 mana. And that can just be a massive, massive play with absurd amounts of value for us. And yeah, let's just go through a couple of those. Here we go. Kiora's Follower. I absolutely love this card. I just love the name. Kiora! Kiora, I'm following. Kiora, I'm over here. Yeah, I picture like kind of just like fanboying a little bit, like Kiora! Regardless, Kiora's Follower, tap on tap, no target permanent. Great. Again, it can help ramp us early. We can utilize that on lands. We can utilize that on the lands our commander gets down, or we can utilize it to untap our commander to do it again. Moving on, Script Ranger, kind of like Quirion Ranger, basically. Bounce that force you control back to your hand, untap a creature. Also, flash flying protection from blue. Nice! Regardless, the important thing is that untap. Speaking of which, Secret Skybreak, not quite as good as Kiора's follower, Kiora! Tap on tap target creature. Seeking the Skybreak. Oh, it's over there. Going to go get it. Regardless, a great way to untap our commander, or again, other untap effects. If we have this, in Kiора's follower in play, we can untap anything with it, essentially. Moving on, Turnabout. This one is quite spicy, and I'm so happy to see that it's budget-friendly, finally. This is quite flexible. Choose artifact, creature, or land, tap all untap permanents of the chosen type target player controls, or untap all the tap permanents. Basically, choose one or the other, untap or tap everything, and say, hey, you know what? Okay, I've got a bunch of creatures in play that have these tap abilities like my commander. I'll untap all them. Or maybe I've got a ton of lands in play. Let's just have a giant ritual effect, essentially. Or conversely, hey, I want to shut my opponent down this turn. Let's tap all their lands. Let's tap all their creatures. Whatever you want to tap or untap, do so with this. Next up, untapping, one of the bestest boys out there, Chalk Retriever, a great card. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap our creature. You're going to be casting a lot of spells. Untap your commander, untap your other things. Do a lot of work with this. Next up, Great Oak Guardian, a great way to untap our entire team on a creature that can pump our entire team. Again, if we've got that token army in play, this can just be a good finisher for us. 6 mana, flash reach, enters the battlefield. Creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until end turn to untap them. You could politic with this and be very sneaky with it too. Like if someone's swinging out at one of your opponents and you don't like that player that's swinging, you're like, hey, player that's got some tapped creatures that's about to get smacked for a lot, would you like to have your creatures untapped and block a lot of their creatures, take them out? Yeah, okay, cool. So you can do that as well. Now, as cool as these cards are, and as spicy as many of these cards are, there is one card, in my opinion, in this deck that stands above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this deck, which is the #1 card out of 99. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Retreat to Coral Helm. Oh my goodness, this thing does so much absurd work for a deck like this, it's not even funny. Well, it's kind of funny. Landfall. Whenever a land is battlefield under your control, choose one. You may tap or untap target creature or scry one. Now, scry one is nice, but, yeah, hey. Every single time we get a land into play, which our commander has an ability that gets lands into play, we get to untap our commander. So we can do it again, and again, and again. And essentially, yeah, if you've got, enough lands in play, or in your hand, I should say, and, if you got a fodder engine in play, like a Spore Mound, or maybe you've got ways to draw into cards that we'll talk about here in a bit to ensure that you're getting lands in your hand, hey, this is basically infinite, essentially. I mean, yeah, there is some kind of a limit to it at a certain point, but also not really. And actually, this does combo with certain lands that we'll talk about here in a bit as well. Yeah, I just keep saying, like, in the future, I promise this is good. I don't want to spoil all the cool cards that interact with this, but just believe me, just at a base level, this is incredible. But the potential for this with this commander is absurd, and that is why it is the Golden Pig, a great card with this commander. But of course, we're not done with great cards just yet, and we're not done with card advantage just yet. So let's move on to tactic number 6, which I am calling Digging Down. And to start things off, we've got one that can help out in a couple of ways with Occult Epiphany. Instant, draw X cards and discard X cards, get a 1/1 white sphere creature token with flying for each card. Type among cards discard this way. So hey, dig through your deck, get the cards that you need in your hand. Maybe that's some lands, maybe it's not lands, whatever you need. Get those in your hand, and with the cards you discarded, some of them will make spirits, and those spirits you can sacrifice with your commander. Or yeah, smack your opponents too. Whatever you want to do. Next up, Read the Runes. Speaking of sacrificing as well, draw X cards for each card drawn this way, discard a card, sacrifice a permanent. So again, kind of like Occult Epiphany, we got there. So this can help choose what hand you need, essentially. Dig deep in your deck, discard the cards that you don't need, or yeah, hey, you're going to have a bunch of creature fodder potentially you're going to sacrifice to keep even more cards in your hand. But next up, we've got a way to keep a lot of those. Hey, pull for tomorrow, pay 1 extra blue mana, essentially, and yeah, keep an absurd amount of those cards because you just have to discard 1 singular card. Speaking of absurd, here we go. Okay, so this is a card that I was referring to earlier in combination with Retreat to Coral Helm and this commander. Have fun. If you draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land, and reveal cards in the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card in your hand. Other cards will display at the bottom of your library in any order. Basically, you get to completely select what you're getting when you're drawing. And with this one, hey, your commander is going to be like, okay, cool. It's good when you have lands in your hand, right? Okay, so tap, sacrifice creature, draw. Oh, I'll choose land. Okay. Oh, I got land. Cool. I'll put it into play. Oh, cool. Yeah, I've got Retreat to Coral Helm. I'm untapping it. I'll do it again and again and again and again. Basically, just get all the lands from your library into play. Also, this prevents you from essentially milling out, or even if you are milled out, you don't lose because it's a card replacement. Essentially, it's a draw replacement. An incredible card for a deck like this. Next up, Deathreap Ritual, a great card for repeatable card advantage throughout the game. Morbid at the beginning of each end step, not just your own. If a creature dies this turn, you may draw a card. Yep, that's going to happen quite a bit, and we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with it. Moving on, Fact or Fiction, just a good card advantage spell. Reveal the top 5 and 1 separate from 2 piles. You get one of those piles in your hand, the other in your graveyard. Great. Good, solid card. Here we go. Next up, though, I love this one. Molder Vine Reclamation. Enchantment, whenever a creature you control dies, you gain 1 life, draw a card. Does not specify non-token. And again, we've got an absurd amount of ways to make an absurd amount of tokens. We're going to be drawing a lot with this. Speaking of which, gross. Tatiova Benthic Druid. Yeah, a landfall commander that is absurd. Glad it was reprinted because it's not budget friendly again. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life, draw a card. Yeah, you can go even further down into your deck. Again, this helps you get more and more lands in your hand for your commander's ability. Have fun with that. Speaking of which, we can also double up our card draw with Thought Reflection. You draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So this in combination with other things like Tatiova can get absurd, can get out of hand. In combination with our commander too, absurd out of hand. Basically, again, our commander, basically once we get that 8 lands in play, right, we have that activation twice essentially. So draw 4 from 1 activation. Yeah, sign me up for that. Thank you. Now, we've talked a lot about our strategy, though, and what we're going to be doing. Let's talk about some ways to throw a wrench into our opponent's strategy, though, with next tactic, tactic number 7, Get Out of Here. I like that name. Alchemist Retrieval, a great card that can help us out if we're just paying a single blue mana, bounce a permanent we control back to our hand. We've got some great ETBs we can utilize, or again, a great way to protect something, like our commander. Or if we're in 1 more mana, we can actually bounce any of our opponent's non-land permanents as well. Moving on, again, we're going to be sacrificing creatures. Massive Animal can take advantage of them. Exile a creature from our graveyard to exile an artifact or enchantment. A huge play for us. And again, an ETB we can utilize very well. Moving on, Outland Liberator. One that actually likes to be sacrificed as well, but by itself sometimes. Pay 1 sacrifice to destroy target artifact or enchantment. It also flips with Daybound Nightbound. On the Nightbound side, we've got the exact same thing. And also, whenever it attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment, offending player control. So we can get even an attack trigger out of this before sacrificing it potentially to destroy something else or to utilize it with our commander. Next up, Reclamation Sage. Simple ETB, destroy an artifact or enchantment. What's not to love about that? Moving on, Retreat to Hagra. It's a great one, and actually one that can make blocking very difficult for our opponents. Whenever land is battlefield under control, choose 1 target creature, gets +1/+0, gains death touch on a turn. So, yeah, we got plenty of ways to get lands into play in instant speed, essentially. So we can swing at someone and be like, "You gonna block?" And they're like, no, because you get his death touch one of your creatures, and I don't want to lose my best creatures. So yeah, this can be a fantastic way to deter, blocks. It can also be a fantastic way to protect yourself. It can be a fantastic way to mess with your opponent's combats. It's great, because again, it doesn't specify your creatures. It also says each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Yeah, it's a great finisher for you as well. Landfall Drain, what's not to love about that? Next up, Foundation Breaker. Hey, if you want to pay the 4, great. If you just want to pay the evoke cost, great. Only 2 mana, destroy an artifact or enchantment on ETB. That's great. What's not to love? Moving on, Acidic Slime. ETB, destroy an artifact. I was about to say creature. Artifact, enchantment, or land. Not a creature, unfortunately. But yeah, a great way to, again, mitigate, to get rid of, pesky artifacts, enchantments, and even, pesky lands, make maybe a Gaia's Cradle or whatnot. And we get rid of a lot of things, not lands though, with Aether Gale. Bounce 6 non-land permanents for just 5 mana. Yeah, sign me up for that. Incredibly effective, incredibly efficient. And again, we can bounce some of our things too if they've got great ETBs. And when it comes to bouncing though, we can set someone back to the Stone Age with River's Rebuke. Bounce every single non-land permanent target player controls back to their hand. Good luck resetting. Sorry about that. Goodbye. And speaking of goodbye, oh my goodness, this is brutal. This is terrible. This is effectively awesome. Butcher Malakir. I love it. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, his opponent sacrifices a creature. This is mean. This is rude. Your opponents won't have any creatures in play. They're going to be gone. They're not going to keep any creatures in play either because, again, you got so much creature power that you can sacrifice. Good luck to them. And, yeah, you can just wipe things out right away, all at once with In Garruk's Wake. You've got easy access to mana, right? You've got plenty of ways to ramp. 9 mana is nothing to you. Destroy all creatures and planeswalkers you don't control. Yeah. Let's just clear everything out, okay? Let's make it easy for our rampaging Baloth, tokens to get through. Good luck to your opponents. Now, finally, though, I guess actually there's two tactics left. I shouldn't rush things, but now let's get to tactic number 8, which I'm calling Stick Around. Other ways to, protect our things outside of, bounce spells and stuff like that. Of course, we've got access to great counter spells like, Counterspell, which is finally budget friendly, 85 cents currently. Please stay budget for me. But yeah, 2 mana counter target spell, what's not to love? Next up, Negate, 2 mana counter target non-creature spell. Slightly easier to cast, a great card, and most non-creature spells are what you actually want to be countering. Not that creatures don't need to be countered too, but most of the time, it's non-creature spells that matter the most. And speaking of a great non-creature spell itself, yeah, Swiftfoot Boots, a great card. Creature is Hexproof and Haste. This helps out with our commander, of course, in both instances to protect it and also to be able to activate that ability right away. And of course, there's other creatures activated abilities too we might want to utilize as well with this. This is a great card. And now let's talk about some great lands for this deck. There are plenty of lands in this deck. I'm not going to go every single one, but in tactic number 9, I'm going to give you some land highlights here. And let's just talk about some simple lands that are incredibly impactful in a landfall deck, like, you know, Evolving Wilds. Hey, this is a great fetch land. I mean, it's not one of those more expensive fetch lands, but it's still a great one. Tap, sacrifice, go get a basic land to play tap. This is basically, hey, one land. First up, mana fixing is nice. Also, landfall 2. 2 landfall triggers from this for every one of your landfall things. Have fun with that. Or how about, you know, 3, Mirrored Landscape. Comes into play, tap, that's fine. Taps for a coast, that's fine. Pay 2 tap, sacrifice, go get 2 basics, a cherry type. Great. Basically, again, landfall trigger 1, and then 2 and 3 at the exact same time. And then one that I kind of mentioned earlier, at least a type of land. Bounce lands like Simic Growth Shaper are incredible. Enters battlefield, tap. Get the bounce day land back to your hand when it comes into play, and it can add green-blue. Basically, a great way to ensure that you've got a lot of, well, landfall abilities, essentially, or landfall triggers, essentially, the possibility of them, because this can just keep going back to your hand again and again and again. It does not specify another land, so you can keep bouncing itself back if you need to. And yeah, that actually does go infinite with your commander, essentially. Once you're set up properly, you need like abundance to make sure you don't mill yourself in the Retreat to Coral Helm. But yeah, this does go infinite. And yeah, it's quite a good card. And of course, there's other bounce lands as well. But yeah, overall, an incredibly powerful commander. One that I think a lot of players out there are really excited about. Is definitely Omega level in my book. There's some crazy things that you can do. There's some infinite things that you can do with it. Simone Dina, you're a great commander. I think a lot of players out there are excited. And yeah, comment below if you are one of those players. Comment below if you're not one of those players. And let me know why in the world you're not excited about it. Unless you're not excited about going up against it, probably, right? Regardless, if you are interested in picking up this deck, again, remember there is a deck list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.